The phone rang at 11:34 p.m. and Keisha Morrison almost didn't answer. She was bone-tired, her knees aching from scrubbing 12 floors of the Millennium Tower today, her hands raw despite the gloves she wore. The luxury high-rise catered to Atlanta's wealthiest residents, and Keisha was invisible to most of them, just another black woman in a cleaning uniform who emptied their trash and made their marble floors shine. She'd been about to collapse into bed when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Probably a scam, she thought. But something made her swipe to answer. "Hello. Please," a child's voice, high and terrified, speaking English with a slight accent. "Please, I need help. My daddy's hurt and there's blood and I don't know what to do." Keisha sat up instantly, exhaustion forgotten. "Slow down, sweetheart. Take a breath. What's your name?" "Gia. Park Gia." The little girl was crying now, words tumbling over each other. "I tried to call 911 but I pressed the wrong number and now you answered and please help us. Daddy won't wake up right and there's so much blood." Every maternal instinct Keisha possessed roared to life. "Gia, listen to me very carefully. I'm going to help you, okay? But I need you to tell me your address. Can you do that?" I live in the Millennium Tower. The penthouse. Number 4501. Keisha's blood ran cold. The Millennium Tower. The building she cleaned. The penthouse she'd never been allowed to enter, the one with the private elevator and the security guards who looked more like soldiers than doormen. The penthouse that belonged to Minjun Park, the man the other cleaning staff whispered about in Korean, their voices dropping to fearful murmurs whenever he passed through the lobby. "Jia, I work in your building," Keisha said, already grabbing her keys and jacket. "I'm coming right now. I need you to unlock your front door if you can, okay? And stay with your daddy. Keep talking to him even if he doesn't answer back." "Okay," Phil whispered. "Please hurry. I'm so scared." "I know, baby. I'm scared too. But we're going to get through this together." Keisha ran. The invisible woman. At 32, Keisha Morrison had perfected the art of being invisible. She moved through the Millennium Tower like a ghost, arriving before dawn, leaving after midnight, cleaning the spaces where Atlanta's elite lived without ever being truly seen. The residents looked through her, past her, around her. To them she was just part of the building's machinery, as essential and unremarkable as the elevator or the air conditioning. Keisha had learned not to mind. Invisibility was safety. Invisibility meant she kept her job, paid her bills, sent money to her grandmother back in Savannah, and saved slowly, painfully slowly, toward the nursing degree she'd been chasing for 5 years. She'd been cleaning the Millennium Tower for 3 years, working for Elite Property Services. The pay was decent, the hours brutal, but it was steady work. And in Keisha's life, steady was everything. Her mother had died when Keisha was 16, leaving her to raise herself while bouncing between relatives who saw her as a burden. She'd put herself through community college while working 2 jobs, had gotten close to finishing her LPN certification before her grandmother got sick and needed help with medical bills. The nursing degree had been postponed. Then postponed again. And again. Now at 32, Keisha was starting to wonder if it would ever happen. But she was a survivor. She'd survived poverty, loss, disappointment, and the daily indignity of being treated like she didn't matter. She'd survived by being quiet, being competent, being invisible. Until tonight, when a terrified child's voice shattered that invisibility completely. Keisha burst through the emergency stairwell door onto the 45th floor, her heart hammering. The penthouse had a private entrance, a massive double door at the end of the hallway. It was standing open. "Gia," Keisha called softly, stepping inside. The penthouse was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Atlanta's glittering skyline, furniture that probably cost more than Keisha made in a year, art on the walls that looked like it belonged in museums. And in the middle of the pristine white living room, a trail of blood. "We're in here." Gia's voice came from down a hallway. Keisha followed the blood trail to a bedroom and her breath caught. A man lay on the floor beside the bed, his white shirt soaked red with blood. He was conscious but barely, his face pale, one hand pressed to his side where the crimson kept spreading. And kneeling beside him, her small hands also covered in blood, was a little girl who couldn't have been more than 7 years old. "You came," Gia whispered, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "You really came." "Of course I came, baby." Keisha dropped to her knees beside the man, her mind shifting into emergency mode. She'd completed EMT basic training before nursing school. It wasn't much, but it was something. She gently moved the man's hand away from his side and lifted his shirt. A deep laceration still bleeding heavily. Knife wound, she thought. Clean edges, not ragged. Someone knew what they were doing. Pa, I need towels. As many clean towels as you can find. And call 911. Tell them we need an ambulance at. No. The man's voice was rough, barely above a whisper, but it carried absolute authority even weakened as he was. No ambulance. No police. Keisha looked at him properly for the first time. Minjun Park was devastatingly handsome, even half dead. Sharp cheekbones, full lips, dark eyes that even clouded with pain held an intensity that made her stomach flip. His black hair was disheveled and there was a tattoo visible on his neck, Korean characters she couldn't read. He was also clearly dangerous. Everything about him screamed power and control, even lying in a pool of his own blood. You're going to bleed out, Keisha said bluntly. You need a hospital. No hospital. His hand shot out with surprising speed, gripping her wrist. His touch was cold, clammy. Can't trust. Who did this? Might finish the job. Their eyes met and Keisha saw something that shocked her. Fear. Not for himself, but when his gaze flickered to Jia, raw terror that his daughter would be left alone. Please, he said, and the word sounded like it cost him everything. Help us. I'll pay, whatever you want, just don't leave her. Keisha looked at Jia's tear-stained face, at this powerful man reduced to begging a stranger for help, and made a decision that would change everything. Okay, she said firmly. But you do exactly what I say. Towels. No. And bring me a first aid kit if you have one. As the little girl ran off, Keisha looked at Minjun. I'm going to save your life. But when this is over, you're going to tell me why someone tried to kill you in your own home. His lips curved into the faintest smile despite the pain. Deal. The isolated king. Minjun Park had built an empire on control. At 38 he commanded one of the most powerful Korean organized crime families in the American South. What had started as his grandfather's small protection racket in Los Angeles had grown under Minjun's leadership into a multi-state operation. Real estate, nightclubs, import-export businesses that were mostly legitimate and some that definitely weren't. He'd inherited the position at 25 when his father was killed. He'd consolidated power through strategic brutality and careful alliances. He'd made enemies of the right people and friends of the necessary ones. And he'd been utterly alone. His wife, Hannah, had died 3 years ago. Cancer, sudden and vicious. She'd been the daughter of another family, their marriage arranged but genuine. They'd built something real together, had created Jia, had been planning their future. Then she was gone and Minjun had been left to raise their daughter while running an empire built on fear. He'd thrown himself into work, into expansion, into making sure his organization was untouchable. He'd become colder, harder, more ruthless. His rivals learned to fear him. His subordinates learned not to question him. And Jia had learned that her father was always busy, always distracted, always choosing his empire over her. Tonight's attack had been a message from the John family, rivals who thought Minjun had grown weak since Hannah's death. They'd sent an assassin to his home, his private sanctuary, to prove that nowhere was safe. The assassin was dead now, disposed of by Minjun's own hand despite the wound he'd taken. But the message was clear. The John family was declaring war. And Minjun, bleeding on his bedroom floor with his terrified daughter beside him, realized he'd been so focused on building an impenetrable empire that he'd left the only thing that truly mattered completely vulnerable. Jia shouldn't have even been here tonight. She was supposed to be at his sister's house in the suburbs, safe and away from this world. But she'd begged to come home, said she missed him, missed her own bed. And he'd said yes because he'd already cancelled 3 dinners with her this week and the guilt was eating at him. Now she'd witnessed him nearly dying. Had made an emergency call to a random stranger because she was 7 years old and terrified and didn't know what else to do. And that stranger, this woman with warm brown skin and gentle hands and a cleaning uniform, had actually come. Minjun watched through hazy vision as Keisha worked on him with competent efficiency. She'd packed the wound with towels, was applying pressure, barking instructions at Jia about boiling water and finding clean sheets. She moved like someone with medical training, her hands steady even though he could see the fear in her eyes. What's your name? He asked, his voice rough. Keisha Morrison. She didn't look up from her work. And before you ask, yes, I'm the night cleaning supervisor for this building. Yes, I know basic first aid and some emergency medical care. And yes, I know this is probably the stupidest thing I've ever done. Despite the pain, Minjun found himself almost smiling. Why did you come? Because your daughter was scared. Keisha finally met his eyes, and there was steel there beneath the warmth. Because no child should have to see their parent bleeding and be alone with it. Because it was the right thing to do. The right thing, Minjun echoed. In his world, people didn't do things because they were right. They did them for money, for power, for fear. The idea of someone racing into danger out of simple human decency was almost foreign to him. Jia, he called weakly. His daughter appeared in the doorway, arms full of towels and supplies, her face still streaked with tears. Come here, baby. She came, and Minjun took her small hand with his free one. You did so good. You were so brave. You saved me by calling for help. I didn't mean to call the wrong number, Jia said, her lower lip trembling. I was trying to press 911, but my hands were shaking and... You called exactly the right person, Minjun interrupted gently. He looked at Keisha. Didn't she? She absolutely did, Keisha agreed, her voice soft. She smiled at Jia, and Minjun watched his daughter's face light up despite her fear. You were very brave, Jia. Your daddy is going to be okay now. Promise. Pa whispered. Keisha hesitated, clearly not wanting to make a promise she might not be able to keep. Then she nodded. I promise I'm going to do everything I can to make sure he's okay. And in that moment, watching this stranger comfort his daughter with genuine warmth, watching her work to save his life with hands that were probably exhausted from a full day's work, Minjun felt something crack open in his chest. Something he hadn't felt since Hannah died. Hope. Inciting incident. The night everything changed. 2 hours later, Minjun was stitched up, Keisha's careful work with supplies from his emergency medical kit, and resting against the headboard of his bed, heavily drugged with the painkillers from the same kit. Jia had finally fallen asleep beside him, her small body curled against his side, one hand fisted in his shirt as if afraid he'd disappear if she let go. And Keisha sat in an armchair across the room, her cleaning uniform now stained with his blood, watching them both with exhausted eyes. You should have taken her out of the room, Minjun said quietly. Before you started working on me. She shouldn't have seen all that blood. She'd already seen it, Keisha replied. And she needed to know you'd be okay. Sending her away would have made her feel more helpless, not less. Minjun studied her. You've done this before. Taken care of someone injured. My uncle was a paramedic. Taught me some things before he passed. She shifted in the chair. I was working on becoming a nurse before life got in the way. Why? The question seemed to surprise her. Why what? Why nursing? Why do you want to help people? Keisha was quiet for a long moment. My mama died when I was 16. Diabetes complication that could have been managed if she'd had better health care, if someone had caught it earlier, if we'd had money for regular doctor visits. She met his eyes. I don't want other people to lose their mothers because they can't afford care. The simple honesty of it hit Minjun hard. I'm sorry about your mother. It was a long time ago. But he could hear the grief still there, carefully controlled. How old is Jia now? Keisha asked, changing the subject. 7. She'll be 8 in 2 months. She's beautiful. She has your eyes. She has her mother's smile, Minjun said softly. Her kindness. Her heart. What happened to her mother? The question was gentle, not prying. Cancer. 3 years ago. Minjun looked down at his sleeping daughter. Jia was 4. He barely remembers Hannah now, just fragments. The way she smelled, the songs she used to sing. I'm sorry, Keisha said, and the sincerity in her voice made his chest ache. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound Jia's soft breathing. You need to tell me what happened tonight, Keisha finally said. Who did this to you? Why can't you go to a hospital or call the police? Minjun measured her with his gaze. She'd saved his life, had seen him vulnerable, had earned some truth. But how much could he tell her without putting her in danger? I run businesses, he said carefully. Import and export, real estate, entertainment venues. Some of those businesses have competitors who don't believe in fair market practices. Keisha's eyebrow arched. That's a very diplomatic way of saying you're involved in organized crime. His lips twitched despite himself. You're perceptive. I'm not stupid, she corrected. I've cleaned this building for 3 years. I know which residents are legitimate wealthy and which ones have bodyguards who carry guns. I know which penthouses get visited by men in expensive suits who look like they could kill someone with their bare hands. She paused. I know your penthouse has security that most government buildings would envy. And yet you still came when Jia called. Your daughter was scared. I don't care what you do for a living. Your child needed help. Keisha leaned forward. But I do care if the person who did this is going to come back. Because if Jia is in danger. She's not, Minjun said immediately. The person who attacked me is dead. I made sure of that before I passed out. Keisha's eyes widened slightly. You killed him. He broke into my home and tried to murder me in front of my daughter. Minjun's voice was flat, emotionless. Yes, I killed him. And I'd do it again. He watched her process this, waiting for fear or disgust. Instead, she just nodded slowly. Where's the body? The question surprised him. Why? Because if there's a body in your penthouse, it needs to be dealt with before Jia wakes up and sees it, Keisha said practically. That child has been traumatized enough tonight. Minjun stared at her, something like wonder mixing with his pain medication haze. It's in the bathroom down the hall. Wrapped in plastic sheeting. My people will come collect it in the morning. Your people, Keisha echoed. The men with guns? Among others. She was quiet again and he could see her thinking, processing, deciding. I should go, she finally said, standing. You need rest and I need to get home before. Don't. The word came out more urgently than Minjun intended. Please. Just stay until morning. I don't want Jia to wake up and find me passed out from the painkillers. She's been through enough. Keisha hesitated. Mr. Park. Minjun, he interrupted. If you're going to save my life and know I'm a criminal, you should probably call me Minjun. A small smile tugged at her lips. Minjun then. I'm not sure it's appropriate for me to stay in your penthouse overnight. I'll pay you. Whatever your rate is, I'll triple it. Quadruple it. He knew he sounded desperate, but he couldn't help it. The thought of Keisha leaving, of being alone with Jia in this bloody aftermath, made his chest tighten with something close to panic. It's not about money, Keisha said quietly. It's about... Please. Minjun cut her off and his voice cracked slightly. I know I have no right to ask. I know you've already done more than anyone could expect. But Jia trusts you. She held your hand while you stitched me up. She believed you when you promised I'd be okay. He swallowed hard. She hasn't trusted anyone outside the family since her mother died. And I'm not ready for her to wake up and have you be gone like everyone else she's cared about. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. Just until morning, Keisha finally agreed. Then I really do need to leave. Relief flooded through Minjun, warming him more than the painkillers. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Keisha said. Wait until I figure out how to explain to my boss why I didn't show up for my shift tomorrow. You won't need to. Minjun's eyes were already drifting closed, exhaustion and medication pulling him under. You work for Elite Property Services, correct? I'll make a call. They'll understand. Minjun, you can't just... But he was already asleep, his hands still resting protectively on Jia's back. Keisha stood there for a long moment watching them. Father and daughter, wrapped around each other, surrounded by luxury that couldn't protect them from loss or fear or the violence that had invaded their home tonight. She should run. Should get as far from this situation as possible. This man was dangerous, his world was dangerous, and getting involved could only end badly for someone like her. But when she looked at Jia's sleeping face, still streaked with dried tears, something in her chest refused to let her walk away. Just until morning, she whispered to herself. She had no idea she was already in too deep to ever truly leave. The morning after reality sets in. Keisha woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of a child's laughter. She sat up with a start, momentarily disoriented. She was on a couch, not Minjun's bedroom armchair where she'd been sitting, but an incredibly comfortable leather sofa in what appeared to be a den. Someone had covered her with a cashmere throw blanket. The events of last night came flooding back and Keisha's stomach dropped. She grabbed her phone. 9:47 a.m. She had 17 missed calls from her supervisor at Elite Property Services and 3 from her grandmother. Shit, she muttered, stumbling to her feet. Bad word. Jia's voice called from somewhere nearby. Daddy says we're not supposed to say bad words even when we're frustrated. Despite everything, Keisha smiled. She followed the voice to a stunning kitchen where Jia sat at a marble island, swinging her legs and eating what looked like French toast. And standing at the stove wearing black silk pajama pants and nothing else, was Minjun. Keisha's breath caught. The bandage she'd wrapped around his torso was visible, stark white against golden skin. And covering his back was the most intricate tattoo she'd ever seen. A dragon in traditional Korean style, scales rendered in incredible detail, winding from his shoulder blades down to his lower back. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and Keisha quickly averted her eyes from his bare chest. Good morning, he said, his voice still rough but stronger than last night. I hope you like French toast. Jia insisted we make breakfast for you. You should be in bed, Keisha said, professional concern overriding her awkwardness. You lost a lot of blood last night and that wound is fine, Minjun interrupted. Thanks to you. He gestured to a chair at the island. Please. Sit. Eat. Keisha hesitated, then sat beside Jia. The little girl immediately scooted closer, her small hand finding Keisha's. You stayed, Jia said, her dark eyes shining. Daddy said you might have to leave in the night, but you stayed. I promised I would, Keisha replied gently. Then to Minjun, though I should have woken up in time to get to work. My supervisor is going to kill me. Already handled. Minjun set a plate of French toast in front of her, then poured coffee from an expensive-looking machine. I called Elite Property Services this morning. Explained that there was an emergency in the building that required your expertise and that you'd be compensated for any missed shifts. Keisha blinked. You what? I also spoke to your supervisor directly. Mr. Chen, correct. Minjun's expression was neutral, but there was something satisfied in his tone. He was very understanding once I explained the situation. What situation did you explain exactly? That you provided emergency medical assistance to a resident and that your services were invaluable. Minjun sat across from her, wincing slightly as he moved. I may have also implied that I'd be making a substantial donation to Elite Property Services Employee Wellness Fund. You bribed my supervisor. I compensated your employer for your time, Minjun corrected. There's a difference. Keisha should have been angry. Should have protested his high-handed manipulation of her job, her life. Instead, she found herself fighting a smile. You're very used to getting your way, aren't you? Always, Minjun agreed, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her stomach flip. They stared at each other for a long moment, something electric charging the air between them. Daddy, your coffee is getting cold, Jill interrupted, oblivious to the tension. Minjun looked away first, taking a sip of his coffee. Jia, why don't you go pick out a movie for us to watch? Something Miss Keisha might like. Okay. The little girl hopped down from her chair and ran off toward what Keisha assumed was a media room. The moment they were alone, Minjun's expression turned serious. We need to talk about what happens next. Next. Keisha's defenses went up. There is no next. I helped you last night because your daughter was scared and you were hurt. Now you're okay, so I should. You're in danger. The words hit like ice water. What? Minjun leaned forward, his elbows on the marble counter. The man who attacked me last night was from the John family. They're rivals who've been testing my organization's weaknesses since my wife died. His jaw clenched. They sent someone to my home, my private sanctuary, to prove I'm vulnerable. Okay, Keisha said slowly. But what does that have to do with me? Jia called you from my personal cell phone. A phone that the John family has been trying to hack for months. Minjun's voice was grim. There's a very high probability they have access to my call logs. Which means they know my daughter called an unknown number during the attack. Keisha's blood ran cold. So they know someone helped you. They know someone helped us, Minjun corrected. And they'll want to know who. It won't take them long to trace the number to find out who you are. But I'm nobody, Keisha protested. I'm just a cleaning woman. I don't matter to. You matter to Jia. Minjun's voice was soft but firm. She hasn't stopped talking about you since she woke up. How you came when she called, how you held her hand, how you promised everything would be okay. He paused. In my world, Keisha, anyone who matters to my daughter automatically becomes leverage against me. The reality of the situation crashed over Keisha like a wave. She wasn't just a good Samaritan who'd helped in an emergency. She'd stepped into a world of organized crime, of family rivalries, of people who used 7-year-old girls as leverage. What are you saying? She whispered. I'm saying I can protect you, but I need you to trust me. Min-jun reached across the counter, his hand stopping just short of touching hers. I have resources, safe houses, security teams. I can make sure the John family never gets near you. Or, Keisha said, her voice shaking slightly, I could just go back to my life. Pretend last night never happened. They have no reason to target some random cleaning woman. You're right, Min-jun agreed. They probably won't bother with you. Relief started to flood through Keisha. Unless they decide to make an example, Min-jun continued, and the relief died. Unless they think that hurting you would hurt me or Jia. Unless they get creative about sending messages. He finally closed the distance, his fingers brushing hers. The touch sent electricity racing up Keisha's arm. I won't lie to you, he said quietly. The safest thing would have been for you never to answer Jia's call. But you did. And now I'm asking you to let me keep you safe. Keisha stared at their almost touching hands. At this dangerous, beautiful man who was looking at her like she was something precious. At the impossible situation she'd stumbled into out of simple kindness. What would protection look like? She heard herself ask. Something like relief flashed across Min-jun's face. For now you stay here. In the penthouse. There's plenty of room and my security is the best in the city. We tell your employer you've accepted a private position. As what? Keisha interrupted. Your live-in maid? That'll look great. Min-jun's lips twitched. As Jia's nanny and my personal assistant. Which technically isn't far from the truth. She clearly wants you around and I could use someone I trust. You don't know me well enough to trust me. You saved my life, Min-jun said simply. You could have left, could have called the police, could have done 100 things that would have destroyed me. Instead you stayed and stitched me up and held my daughter's hand. His fingers finally closed around hers, warm and strong. That's enough. Keisha knew she should pull her hand away. Should refuse this insane offer. Should run back to her small apartment and her normal, boring, safe life. But when she thought about Jia's smile, about the little girl who'd called a stranger in her darkest moment and been answered, about walking away and leaving that child vulnerable to whatever came next. How long? She asked. What? How long would I need to stay? Until the threat passes. Min-jun's expression turned grim. In my world, threats don't really pass. They evolve. But I'm meeting with the John family in 3 days. We'll come to an understanding, one way or another. The underlying violence in those words should have terrified her. Instead, Keisha found it oddly reassuring that he was honest about who he was. I have a grandmother in Savannah, she said. She depends on me. If I stay here, I need to know she's safe too. Done. Min-jun didn't hesitate. I'll have security on her by this afternoon. Subtle, nothing that will alarm her, just protection. I have bills to pay. An apartment. A life. I'll cover everything, Min-jun said. Consider it payment for saving my life. Name your price, Keisha. Whatever you need, it's yours. She should have felt bought. Should have been offended. Instead, she just felt tired and overwhelmed and strangely safe despite everything. I found it. Jia's voice rang out as she bounded back into the kitchen, holding a DVD case. Moana. Miss Keisha looks like Moana, don't you think, Daddy? Min-jun's eyes swept over Keisha. Her brown skin, her natural curls currently pulled back in a messy bun, her full lips and strong features. Something heated flickered in his gaze. Yes, he said softly. She does. Keisha felt her face warm under his scrutiny. Can we watch it together? Jia asked, looking between them hopefully. All 3 of us. Please. Min-jun looked at Keisha, a question in his eyes. And Keisha, against every bit of common sense she possessed, nodded. Yeah, she said. Let's watch Moana. Jia cheered and grabbed Keisha's hand, pulling her toward the media room. As they walked, Keisha glanced back to see Min-jun following, one hand pressed to his injured side, his expression soft as he watched his daughter's excitement. She was stepping into a world she didn't understand, accepting protection from a man she barely knew, getting involved with a crime family that could destroy her. But looking at Jia's joyful face, feeling the little girl's trust in the way she held Keisha's hand, maybe some risks were worth taking. Protection phase, settling into danger. 3 days passed in a surreal blur. Keisha called her grandmother, explaining that she'd accepted a live-in position with a wealthy family. Grandma May was suspicious, she always was, but accepted it when Keisha promised to visit soon and mentioned the pay increase. What Keisha didn't mention was the black SUV that now sat discreetly down the street from her grandmother's Savannah home, or the fact that Minjun had paid off Grandma May's mortgage as a signing bonus. Elite Property Services had been surprisingly understanding about Keisha's sudden departure, probably because Minjun had made a donation large enough to fund their operations for 6 months. And Keisha's apartment had been cleaned out by Minjun's people, her belongings carefully packed and moved to a storage unit that was paid up for the next year. It should have felt like her life was being dismantled. Instead, it felt like being taken care of, and Keisha wasn't sure how she felt about that. The penthouse had a guest suite that was larger than Keisha's entire former apartment. It had its own bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in, a walk-in closet that Minjun's sister had mysteriously filled with clothes in Keisha's exact size, and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Atlanta's skyline. It was beautiful. It was luxurious. And it was a gilded cage. "You're overthinking," Minjun said from the doorway, making Keisha jump. She'd been standing at the window watching the city lights, trying to process her new reality. It was late, past midnight, and she'd assumed everyone was asleep. Minjun was in loungewear, black pants and a fitted t-shirt that showed off the muscle she'd felt when she'd stitched him up. The bandage around his torso was smaller now, his wound healing with the help of a private doctor who'd visited twice. "Can't sleep?" he asked, stepping into the room. "Strange bed," Keisha said, which was true but not the whole truth. Minjun moved to stand beside her at the window, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made her want to lean closer. "You're regretting staying," he said. "It wasn't a question." "I'm trying to figure out if I'm insane," Keisha corrected. 3 days ago I was a cleaning woman with a simple life. Now I'm living in a penthouse, playing nanny to a little girl I barely know, under the protection of a man who kills people and runs a criminal empire. And Minjun's voice was neutral, but she could feel the tension in him. "And I should be terrified," Keisha said. "I should be planning my escape. Instead, I'm standing here thinking about how Jia laughed at dinner tonight, and how she started calling me Keisha-uni, even though I'm not Korean, and how you looked at her when she showed you her drawing of the 3 of us as a family." She turned to face him. "That's what scares me, Minjun. Not your world or your enemies or the danger. What scares me is how quickly this is starting to feel normal. How much I'm starting to care." Minjun's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "And if I said I'm starting to care too?" His voice was rough velvet. "If I said that watching you with Jia makes me feel things I haven't felt since Hannah died? If I said that I think about you constantly, that I catch myself looking for excuses to be near you, that the thought of you leaving makes my chest tight?" Keisha's breath caught. "Minjun. I know it's too fast," he interrupted. "I know you barely know me. I know I have no right to feel this way about someone I met less than a week ago." His forehead pressed against hers. "But when you held my hand while you stitched me up, when you promised Jia everything would be okay, when you stayed even though you were scared, something in me recognized something in you." "What?" Keisha whispered. "Home," Minjun breathed. "You feel like home, Keisha. And I haven't had that in 3 years." She should pull away. Should maintain professional boundaries. Should remember that this man was dangerous and this situation was temporary, and getting emotionally involved would only end in heartbreak. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, a question more than a statement. Minjun froze for a heartbeat, then made a low sound in his throat and kissed her back. His hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer, and Keisha's arms wrapped around his neck. The kiss deepened, heat flooding through her as his tongue traced her lower lip. She gasped, and he took advantage, his mouth claiming hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. One hand tangled in her hair while the other pressed against her lower back, holding her against him. Keisha had been kissed before, but never like this. Never with this combination of tenderness and hunger, never with the feeling that the person kissing her was trying to memorize every sensation. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Minjun's eyes were dark with desire. "We should stop," he said, but he didn't let her go. "Probably," Keisha agreed, but her hands were sliding under his shirt, finding warm skin and hard muscle. Jia could wake up. His lips moved to her jaw, her throat, finding the sensitive spot below her ear that made her gasp. "Bad idea," Keisha managed, even as she tilted her head to give him better access. "Terrible idea," Minjun agreed, his teeth scraping against her pulse point. "Minjun." His name came out as a moan. He pulled back, his control clearly hanging by a thread. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is moving too fast, that you need time, that I'm taking advantage of the situation. Tell me something that will make me walk away right now, because if you don't, I'm going to carry you to that bed and show you exactly how I feel about you." Keisha looked at him. This dangerous, powerful man who was looking at her like she was something precious, who'd opened his home to protect her, who made his daughter smile and showed glimpses of vulnerability that she suspected few people ever saw. He should tell him to stop. Should be sensible and cautious and smart. "Don't stop," she whispered instead. Minjun's control shattered. He lifted her easily, carrying her to the bed despite his injury. He laid her down carefully, following her down, covering her body with his. "You're sure?" His hand cupped her face. "Because once we cross this line, Keisha, I won't be able to let you go. You'll be mine, and I'm a possessive man when it comes to what's mine." "Then make me yours," Keisha said, and pulled him down into another searing kiss. The next morning, complications. Keisha woke wrapped in Minjun's arms, her head on his chest, his heartbeat steady under her ear. Morning light filtered through the curtains, and for a moment she just lay there, savoring the warmth and safety of being held. Last night had been intense. Overwhelming. Perfect in ways she hadn't expected. Minjun had been demanding but tender, passionate but careful of his injury, taking his time to learn what made her gasp and moan and beg. He'd worshipped her body with his hands and mouth, had whispered things in Korean that sounded like prayers, had made her feel beautiful and wanted and cherished. And when they'd finally joined together, when he'd buried himself inside her and groaned her name like a benediction, Keisha had felt something shift in her chest. Something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. This wasn't just physical attraction. This was deeper, more dangerous, more real. "I can feel you thinking," Minjun murmured, his voice rough with sleep. His arms tightened around her. "Stop overthinking and stay here with me." "I have to get up," Keisha protested weakly. "Jia will wake soon, and if she finds us like this." "Jia is still asleep. I can hear her breathing monitor from here." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "And even if she weren't, I'm not letting you go yet." Keisha smiled despite herself. "Possessive, remember? I warned you." His hand stroked down her spine, making her shiver. "You chose to stay anyway. I'm starting to think I'm a little crazy." "Good." Minjun rolled them so he was above her, his weight pressing her into the mattress. "I like you a little crazy." He kissed her slowly, deeply, and Keisha felt heat building again despite their activities the night before. "Minjun," she gasped when his mouth moved to her throat. "We really should." A knock at the door made them both freeze. "Daddy." Ja's voice called. "Are you in there with Keisha Uni?" Minjun dropped his forehead to Keisha's shoulder with a groan. "Yes, baby. Just talking. What do you need?" "Uncle Tiong is here. He says it's important." Minjun's entire body went tense. He lifted his head, his expression shifting from soft to hard in an instant. "Tiong?" Keisha asked quietly. "My second in command." Minjun was already moving, pulling on clothes with efficient speed. He wouldn't come to the penthouse unless it was urgent. Anxiety spiked through Keisha. "Is it the John family? Is something wrong?" "I don't know yet." Minjun pulled on a shirt, then turned back to cup Keisha's face. "Stay here. Let me handle this." "Minjun." He kissed her quick and fierce. "Trust me. Please." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Keisha lay there for a moment, her heart pounding, before getting up and quickly dressing in jeans and a soft sweater. She crept to the door, opening it just enough to hear voices from the living room. "Can't postpone the meeting," a male voice was saying. Deep, authoritative, speaking English with a heavier accent than Minjun's. The John family is demanding answers about their missing enforcer. If we don't meet with them today, they'll assume we're hiding something. We are hiding something, Minjun replied coldly. I killed their enforcer in my home after he attacked me and traumatized my daughter. Which is why we need to handle this carefully, Taeyong said. The elders are involved now. They want both families at the table to resolve this before it escalates into full war. When? 2 hours. The neutral territory downtown. Silence. Then Minjun, fine. Assemble the team. Full security protocols. Already done. But Hyung. Taeyong paused. There's something else. What? The John family knows about the woman. Keisha's blood ran cold. How? Minjun's voice was dangerously quiet. They pulled your phone records. They know Jia called someone during the attack, and they know that same number has been registered to the building's guest Wi-Fi for the past 3 days. Taeyong sounded grim. They're asking questions. About who she is, why she's here, what she means to you. She means nothing, Minjun said flatly, and Keisha felt the words like a knife to her chest. She's Jia's nanny. A civilian who got caught up in something she shouldn't have. Is that all she is? Taeyong's voice was knowing. Because the men have noticed the way you look at her, Hyung. And if they've noticed, the John family will notice too. Another silence, heavy with tension. What are you suggesting? Minjun finally asked. Bring her to the meeting. Absolutely not. Hear me out, Taeyong said quickly. If she's just a nanny, just a civilian employee, then having her there proves it. Shows the John family she's nothing important, nothing worth targeting. Or it paints a target on her back. The target is already there, Taeyong argued. At least this way you control the narrative. You show them she's under your protection but not worth the political fallout of harming. And if they don't care about political fallout? Then we handle it, Taeyong said grimly. But Hyung, hiding her makes her seem important. Treating her like a secret makes her a vulnerability. Be open about her presence and she becomes just another employee. Keisha couldn't listen anymore. She stepped into the living room and both men turned sharply. Taeyong was tall and lean with sharp features and calculating eyes. He looked Keisha up and down with undisguised assessment and she felt like a bug under a microscope. Ms. Morrison, I presume, he said in English. That's me. Keisha lifted her chin. And I agree with you. I should go to the meeting. No, Minjun said immediately. You said the John family already knows about me, Keisha said, walking toward him. Hiding me now just makes me seem like I matter more than I do. You do matter, Minjun said, his voice rough. More than you should, more than is safe, but you matter, Keisha. Her heart squeezed at the admission, especially after what she'd overheard him say to Taeyong. Then protect me by letting me be visible, she said gently. She took his hand, squeezing. Your friend is right. If I'm just Jia's nanny, there's no reason to hide me. No reason for them to see me as leverage. Minjun's jaw clenched. I don't like this. I don't either, Keisha admitted. But I trust you to keep me safe. Something shifted in his expression. He pulled her close, seemingly unconcerned with Taeyong watching. If anything happens, he said quietly, fiercely, if you feel even slightly unsafe, you tell me immediately. Understood. Understood. He kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it made Keisha's eyes sting. Well, Taeyong said dryly, I can see why the men have noticed things. Minjun shot him a warning look. Shut up, Taeyong. Just saying, Hyung. For someone who means nothing, you're awfully protective. I said shut up. Despite the tension, Keisha found herself smiling. I should check on Jia. Will she be okay while we're gone? My sister is coming to stay with her, Minjun said. Sujin is the only person I trust completely with Jia. Should I meet her first? To make sure she knows I'm. She knows about you, Minjun interrupted. I may have mentioned you. Taeyong snorted. Mentioned is putting it lightly. He called her at 3 a.m. to tell her he'd met someone. Taeyong, I swear to God. I'm going, the other man said, grinning. But Hyung, I'm happy for you. It's about time. After he left, Keisha turned to Minjun. You called your sister about me? He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I was processing. After that first night. After you stayed and saved my life and I realized you were going to upend everything. And what did she say? That I should be careful, Minjun admitted. That getting involved with a civilian was dangerous for everyone. That I was being reckless and emotional and stupid. Oh. Keisha's stomach sank. But then I told her about how you held Jia's hand and promised everything would be okay, Minjun continued. And she said any woman who could make Jia smile again deserved a chance. He cupped Keisha's face. So she's on our side. Whatever happens today, whatever comes next, you'll have allies. I don't even know what's happening today, Keisha said. What is this meeting? Minjun's expression turned grim. It's where I explain to my enemies why I killed their enforcer without starting a war. Where I prove I'm still strong enough to lead my organization despite recent complications. Where I introduce you as someone under my protection and make it clear that harming you would have consequences. So no pressure then, Keisha said weakly. You don't have to do this, Minjun said. We can find another way. But Keisha thought about Jia, about the little girl who'd called for help and been answered. About building something real with this dangerous, complicated man who made her feel things she'd never felt before. No, she said firmly. I'm in this now. Let's go meet your enemies. Minjun kissed her, deep and possessive. Stay close to me. Don't speak unless spoken to directly. And if I tell you to leave, you leave immediately. No questions, no arguments. Yes, sir, Keisha said with just a hint of teasing. His eyes darkened. Don't call me that unless you want me to forget about this meeting and take you back to bed. Heat flooded through Keisha despite the danger looming. Rain check. Definitely, Minjun promised, his voice rough with want. 2 hours later, Keisha found herself in the back of a black SUV, surrounded by armed guards, heading into the heart of organized crime politics. And despite everything, the danger, the fear, the absolute insanity of her situation, she felt strangely calm. Because Minjun's hand was wrapped around hers, solid and warm and reassuring. And for now that was enough. The meeting face to face with enemies. The neutral territory turned out to be a private dining room in one of Atlanta's most exclusive restaurants. The kind of place where dinner for two cost more than Keisha used to make in a month. Minjun's security team swept the room first while Keisha waited in the SUV with Taeyong and 2 other guards whose names she hadn't caught. Both men were massive, armed, and had been politely distant since picking her up. Nervous? Taeyong asked, studying her with those calculating eyes. Terrified, Keisha admitted. But trying not to show it. Good. Fear is smart. Overconfidence gets people killed. He tilted his head. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone more polished, more ambitious. The kind of woman who usually attaches herself to powerful men. Taeyong's gaze wasn't unkind, just assessing. But you're different. You actually care about him, don't you? Is that a problem? It is if it makes him weak, Taeyong said bluntly. Minjun has been untouchable since Hannah died. Cold, calculating, focused. His enemies fear him because he has nothing to lose except Jia, and she's so well protected that getting to her is impossible. And now I'm a weakness, Keisha finished. Now you're a complication, Taeyong corrected. But maybe that's not entirely bad. He's been half dead inside for 3 years. I'd rather have him alive and complicated than perfect and hollow. Before Keisha could respond, Minjun appeared at the SUV door. He'd changed into a black suit that probably cost more than a car, his hair styled back, his expression cold and controlled. He looked every inch the crime lord, dangerous and untouchable. Until his eyes found Keisha and something warm flickered there. Ready? He asked, offering his hand. Keisha took it, letting him help her out of the vehicle. She'd borrowed clothes from the mysterious wardrobe in her room. A simple black dress that was elegant without being flashy, paired with modest heels. Minjun's hand settled on her lower back, possessive and protective. Remember what I said, he murmured as they walked toward the restaurant. Stay close, stay quiet, and if I tell you to leave. I leave immediately, Keisha finished. I got it. Inside, the private dining room was set up like a negotiation. A large round table with chairs positioned for multiple parties. Several men in expensive suits were already seated, their bodyguards lining the walls. And at the far end of the table sat a man who made Keisha's skin crawl. He was older than Minjun, maybe mid-50s, with slicked back hair and eyes like a shark, cold, assessing, predatory. When those eyes landed on Keisha, she felt examined and dismissed in an instant. John Diyun, Minjun said, his voice neutral but his hand tightening on Keisha's back. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Park Minjun. Diyun's voice was smooth, cultured. I see you've recovered from your incident. Thanks to capable assistance. Minjun pulled out a chair for Keisha, a gesture of respect that didn't go unnoticed by the men around the table. As Keisha sat, she caught several pairs of eyes on her, curious, calculating, some openly hostile. Shall we dispense with pleasantries? An elderly Korean man at the head of the table spoke. His voice carried authority that made even Minjun straighten slightly. We're here to discuss the death of Kim Jae-sung, who was found in the river 3 days ago. The elder, Keisha realized. The one who arbitrated between families. Jae-sung broke into my home, Minjun said, his voice cold. He attacked me in my bedroom while my 7-year-old daughter was in the next room. He left me no choice but to defend myself. Convenient, Diyun said, his tone dripping with skepticism. You kill my man and claim self-defense with no witnesses. There was a witness. Minjun's hand found Keisha's under the table, squeezing gently. My daughter called for emergency help. Someone responded and can verify that I was indeed wounded. All eyes turned to Keisha. Ms. Morrison, the elder said gently. Would you care to share what you saw that night? Keisha's mouth went dry. She looked at Minjun, who gave her a small nod. I received a call around 11:30 p.m., she said, proud that her voice stayed steady. A little girl was crying, said her father was hurt and there was blood. I work in their building, so I went to help. She met the elder's eyes. When I arrived, Minjun was bleeding heavily from a stab wound to his torso. His daughter was terrified. I provided first aid and stayed until he was stable. And you saw no one else? The elder asked. No, sir. But the wound was fresh and there were signs of a struggle. Signs of a struggle she could have caused herself, Diyun interjected smoothly. Or that Park Minjun could have staged. Why would I stage an attack in front of my daughter? Minjun's voice was dangerously quiet. To justify killing my enforcer, Diyun shot back. To eliminate someone who perhaps knew too much about your organization's weaknesses. Or perhaps, Taeyong spoke up from behind Minjun, your enforcer was sent to assassinate my boss and failed. The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. Hands moved toward weapons. Bodyguards shifted position. Gentlemen, the elder said sharply. This accusation requires evidence. I have evidence, Minjun said. He nodded to Taeyong, who produced a tablet and slid it across the table to the elder. Keisha watched as the old man's eyes scanned whatever was on the screen, his expression growing darker. These are text messages, the elder said slowly, between Kim Jae-sung and someone within the John organization. Discussing Park Minjun's schedule, his security protocols, and the best time to strike when his daughter would be present. Diyun's face went carefully blank. Those could be fabricated. They're from Jae-sung's phone, which we recovered from his body, Taeyong said. The phone you've been trying to locate for 3 days. We have the metadata, the GPS coordinates, everything. Even if they're real, Diyun said tightly, they don't prove I authorized the attack. No, Minjun agreed. But they prove your organization sent an assassin to my home. Which means I was within my rights to defend myself. He leaned forward. The question is, Diyun, are you going to claim responsibility for the attack? Or are you going to claim you've lost control of your people? It was a masterful trap, Keisha realized. Either Diyun admitted to ordering the assassination, which would justify Minjun's actions, or he admitted his organization was fractured and he couldn't control his own men. Diyun's eyes flickered with rage, but he kept his voice level. I claim that rogue elements within my organization acted without authorization. Kim Jae-sung will be posthumously expelled from the family for his actions. Acceptable, the elder said. Park Minjun acted in self-defense against an unauthorized attack. No blood debt is owed. He looked between the two men. However, the fact that such an attack could occur suggests tensions that need to be addressed. I have no quarrel with the John family, Minjun said, as long as my family is left alone. And I have no quarrel with the Park family, Diyun replied, as long as certain territorial agreements are respected. They were negotiating now, Keisha realized. Using her presence, the attack, everything as leverage for whatever larger game they were playing. It went on for another hour. Discussions of territory, of business arrangements, of respect and protocol. Keisha sat quietly, Minjun's hand never leaving hers under the table, and tried to process the surreal reality of her situation. These men were discussing murder and money and power like it was a business meeting, which she supposed it was. Finally, the elder declared the meeting concluded. Agreements were made, hands were shaken, and Minjun was standing, pulling Keisha up with him. One moment, Park Minjun, Dyun's voice stopped them. Keisha felt Minjun tense. Dyun approached, his eyes on Keisha with an intensity that made her want to step back. Minjun shifted slightly, putting himself partially between them. "This is the woman who saved your life?" Dyun asked. "This is Ms. Morrison," Minjun said coldly. "My daughter's nanny and a member of my household staff." "How fortunate," Dyun said smoothly, "that she was available to help. How fortunate that she lives in your building. How fortunate that she seems so comfortable in your presence." The implication was clear. He didn't believe the just an employee story. "I'm a very fortunate man," Minjun replied, his voice like ice. Dyun smiled and it didn't reach his eyes. "Indeed. I hope your fortune continues, Park Minjun. It would be a shame if anything unfortunate happened to disturb your happiness." "Are you threatening me?" Minjun's hand moved to Keisha's back, protective. "Simply observing," Dyun said. "That fortune can be fickle. That the things we care about can be fragile. That a wise man protects what's precious to him." He walked away, leaving the threat hanging in the air. Minjun didn't speak until they were back in the SUV, surrounded by his security team, driving away from the restaurant. Then he pulled Keisha into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," he said into her hair. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have brought you there. Shouldn't have exposed you to him." "I'm okay," Keisha assured him even though her hands were shaking. "Minjun, I'm okay." "He threatened you." "Right to my face, he threatened you." "But he can't actually do anything," Keisha said. "Right? The elder ruled in your favor. There's no blood debt. We're safe." Minjun pulled back and the look in his eyes made her stomach drop. "The elder ruled on the assassination attempt," he said quietly. "But Dyun now knows you matter to me. Which means you're leverage, Keisha. And men like him don't give up leverage easily. So what do? We stay vigilant. We keep you protected." Minjun cupped her face. "And I make it very, very clear that anyone who touches you answers to me." The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed her. Instead it made her feel safe. "Take me home," she said softly. "Back to Jia. Back to the penthouse." "Home," Minjun echoed and something warm flickered in his expression. "Yeah. Let's go home." Escalation. The threat becomes real. For 2 weeks nothing happened. Keisha settled into a routine that felt surreal in its domesticity. She woke up in Minjun's bed. She'd stopped pretending to sleep in the guest room after the third night. She had breakfast with Jia, who'd started teaching her basic Korean phrases. She spent afternoons helping with homework and playing games and reading stories. And in the evenings after Jia was asleep, Minjun would find Keisha in their room and show her with his body just how much he'd been thinking about her all day. It was perfect. It was dangerous. And Keisha knew it couldn't last. The attack came on a Tuesday afternoon. Keisha had taken Jia to the park, a small, private green space near the building, surrounded by Minjun's security team. 3 guards in civilian clothes positioned around the perimeter, 1 by the entrance, 2 more in an SUV nearby. Should have been safe. Jia was on the swings, laughing as Keisha pushed her higher and higher. The autumn sun was warm, the air crisp, and for a moment, Keisha let herself believe this could be her life. That she could have this little girl's laughter and Minjun's love and safety. Then the first guard's radio crackled urgently in Korean. Keisha saw him tense, saw his hand move to his concealed weapon. He started toward them, speaking rapidly into his radio. "Keisha, you need higher." Jia called, oblivious. "Just a second, baby," Keisha said, her heart starting to pound. The guard reached them. "We need to leave. Now." "What's wrong?" "Possible threat. We're evacuating to the secondary location." Keisha lifted Jia off the swing, the little girl protesting. "But I wasn't done playing." "We'll come back later," Keisha promised, forcing her voice to stay calm. "Right now we need to." The gunshot shattered the afternoon peace. One of the guards by the entrance went down, blood blooming on his shoulder. People in the park started screaming, running. Go! The guard next to Keisha shouted, pushing them toward the SUV. Get her in the vehicle. Keisha ran, Jia in her arms, the little girl now crying in fear. More gunshots. Shouts in Korean. The sound of car engines. They were 10 feet from the SUV when a black van screeched to a stop between them and safety. The side door opened and 3 men emerged, guns drawn. Keisha spun, looking for an escape route, but they were surrounded. The guard with them went down, shot in the leg. Keisha fell to her knees over him, trying to shield Jia with her body. Don't hurt them, the guard gasped in accented English. Park Minjun will. Park Minjun will do exactly what we want, one of the attackers said in perfect English. He was young, maybe late 20s, with a face that would have been handsome if not for the cruelty in his eyes. Because now we have what he cares about. He grabbed for Jia and Keisha fought like a wildcat. She scratched his face, drew blood, kicked at his knee. Years of survival instincts kicked in. She wasn't going to let anyone take this child. Bitch, the man snarled and backhanded her across the face. Pain exploded in Keisha's skull. She fell, stars bursting in her vision. Through the haze she heard Jia screaming, saw the men grabbing the little girl. No, Keisha gasped, trying to get up. Don't. Something hard hit the back of her head and everything went dark. When Keisha woke, she was in a car. Her head was pounding, her face throbbing where she'd been hit. She tried to move and realized her hands were zip-tied behind her back. She's awake, a voice said in Korean. Keisha blinked, her vision slowly clearing. She was in the back of a van lying on the floor. And across from her, also zip-tied, was Jia. The little girl's face was streaked with tears, her eyes wide with terror. Keisha Uni, she whispered. I'm here, baby, Keisha said softly. I'm right here. How touching, the young man who'd hit her said from the front seat. He turned to look at them, his face now sporting 3 angry scratches. The nanny dies protecting the child. Very heroic. Where are you taking us? Keisha demanded. Somewhere Park Minjun will have to come get you, the man replied. Don't worry. We're not going to hurt the girl. She's just bait. And me. His smile was cruel. You're the message. To show Park Minjun what happens when he embarrasses the John family. Fear spiked through Keisha, but she forced it down. She needed to stay calm, stay alert, look for an opportunity. Minjun will kill you for this, she said. He'll try, the man agreed. And we're counting on it. See, when he comes for you, and he will come, we all saw how he looked at you at that meeting. He'll be emotional, reckless. He'll make mistakes. He leaned closer. And that's when John Duyun will finally eliminate the Park family for good. You're using us as bait for a trap, Keisha realized. Very smart for a cleaning woman, the man mocked. Yes. Jia ensures he comes. You ensure he's too angry to think straight. And the combination will be his downfall. Keisha looked at Jia, who was shaking but trying to be brave. The little girl who'd called a wrong number and changed Keisha's entire life. The child she'd come to love as if she were her own. It's going to be okay, Keisha told her softly. Your daddy will come and everything will be okay. Promise. Pa whispered. Keisha thought about Minjun, about his resources and his intelligence and the cold fury she'd seen in his eyes when anyone threatened what was his. I promise, she said. Your daddy always keeps his family safe. She just hoped she and Jia could stay alive long enough for him to reach them. Minjun's response, unleashing hell. Minjun was in a meeting with potential investors when Taeyong burst into the conference room, his face pale. Hyung. Just one word, but the fear in it made Minjun's blood run cold. He excused himself, following Taeyong into the hallway. What happened? The park. There was an attack. Jia and Keisha were taken. The world tilted. For a moment Minjun couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process the words he was hearing. Taken, he repeated numbly. John Duyun's people. They hit the security team hard. 2 men down, 1 critical. Grabbed both of them and disappeared. Taeyong's voice was tight. Hyung, I'm sorry. We should have had more men, should have anticipated. Minjun held up a hand, stopping him. He needed to think. Needed to push past the panic threatening to consume him and think. Casualties. Lee Minho is in surgery. The others will recover. Taeyong hesitated. Keisha fought them. Injured one of the attackers badly enough that he left blood at the scene. We're running DNA now. Something broke inside Minjun. Keisha had fought to protect Jia. Had put herself between his daughter and armed men. Had been hurt trying to save the child who wasn't even hers. Demands. His voice was cold, empty of emotion. The only way he could function right now was to turn off everything human and become the weapon he'd been trained to be. Not yet. But they will come. Location tracking? Both their phones were left at the scene. We're checking traffic cameras, but they'll have switched vehicles by now. Minjun pulled out his phone and dialed a number he'd hoped never to use. Park Minjun, a gravelly voice answered. I wondered when you'd call. I need information. Cho Jinwoo. Jinwoo was an information broker who worked with multiple families, selling intelligence to the highest bidder. He was expensive, morally flexible, and absolutely reliable. The John kidnapping, Jinwoo said without preamble. I heard. What do you know? That Duyun is planning to draw you into a trap. That he has your daughter and your woman at a warehouse in the industrial district. That he's assembling a small army to take you out when you show up for the rescue. How many men? 20, maybe more. He's calling in favors from allied families. This is his move to eliminate you, Minjun. He's been planning it since you embarrassed him at the meeting. 20 men. Minjun had expected that. What he hadn't expected was the cold calm settling over him. Location. I'll text it to you. But Minjun? This is a suicide mission. Even with your best people you'll be outnumbered and outgunned. Then I'll make sure to take as many of them with me as possible. He hung up and looked at Taeyong. Assemble everyone. Full tactical gear. Every man we have. Hyung, this is a trap. I know. Minjun's voice was arctic. But they have Jia. They have Keisha. So I'm walking into their trap and I'm going to burn it to the ground around them. We need a plan. The plan is simple, Minjun interrupted. I go in. I get my family out. And anyone who stands in my way dies. This is suicide, Taeyong said flatly. Then let it be suicide. Minjun met his oldest friend's eyes. But I'm not leaving them there. I can't. Taeyong. Jia is my daughter. And Keisha. His voice cracked slightly. Keisha is everything. I just found her. I can't lose her now. Taeyong studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Then we do this right. We call in every favor, every alliance. The elders won't sanction this, but some of the younger families owe you. We can get you back up. How long? 3 hours, maybe 4. Minjun thought of Keisha and Jia, terrified and alone, waiting for him to save them. Every minute felt like a lifetime. Make it 2 hours, he said. And Taeyong? If I don't make it out. Don't, Taeyong cut him off. Don't you dare give me a goodbye speech. You're going to get them back and you're all going to be fine. Minjun wanted to believe that. Needed to believe that. But he'd lived in this world long enough to know that sometimes love wasn't enough. Sometimes the bad guys won. Sometimes you lost everything that mattered despite your best efforts. He thought of Keisha's smile, the way she looked at him like he was more than his worst choices. Jia's laughter, her trust, the way she'd started calling Keisha, Uni, like it was the most natural thing in the world. His family. The family he'd built from nothing, from a chance phone call and a woman brave enough to answer. I'm getting them back, he said, and it was a promise to himself as much as to Taeyong. Whatever it costs. I'm bringing them home. Keisha and Ji, survival and courage. The warehouse was cold and smelled of oil and rust. Keisha and Jia had been separated shortly after arrival. Keisha thrown into a small office with no windows, Jia taken somewhere else. Keisha had screamed, fought, begged them not to take the little girl, but they just laughed and shoved her into the room. That had been maybe an hour ago. It was hard to tell time with no natural light. Now Keisha sat with her back against the wall, her hands still zip-tied, her head pounding from where she'd been hit. Her cheek was swollen where the man had backhanded her, and she was pretty sure she had a concussion. But she was alive. And somewhere in this building Jia was alive too. That's what mattered. They just needed to stay alive until Minjun came. Because he would come, Keisha had no doubt about that. The question was whether they'd all survive what came next. The door opened and Keisha tensed. But instead of one of the armed guards, it was a young Korean woman carrying a first aid kit. I'm supposed to clean you up, the woman said in accented English. Her hands were shaking. They want you presentable when Park Min-jun arrives. Where's Jia? Keisha demanded. The little girl who was with me, is she okay? She's fine. In another room with Mrs. Kim watching her. They're not going to hurt the child. The woman knelt beside Keisha. Hey, Keisha nodded, and the woman began gently cleaning the blood from her face. You're scared, Keisha observed quietly. Of course I'm scared, the woman whispered. Do you know what Park Min-jun will do when he gets here? How many people will die? Then why are you part of this? I didn't have a choice. My brother works for the John family. They said if I didn't help they'd hurt him. Tears filled her eyes. I don't want to be here. I don't want anyone to get hurt. An idea formed in Keisha's mind. Desperate, risky, but maybe their only chance. What's your name? Hannah. Hannah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. When Min-jun comes, it's going to be bad. A lot of people are going to die and your brother might be one of them. Keisha leaned forward. But if you help me help Jia get out of here before that happens, I promise Min-jun will protect your brother. We'll make sure he's safe. Hannah's hands stilled. I can't. You can, Keisha interrupted gently. You're bringing me first aid supplies. You have access to the building. You could get Jia and me out the back way before the shooting starts. They'd kill me. Min-jun would protect you, Keisha promised. Both you and your brother. He takes care of the people who help his family. Hannah was shaking her head, but Keisha could see the temptation there. Please, Keisha said. That little girl is 7 years old. She doesn't deserve to be caught in a war zone. Help me save her and I swear to you, you'll have Min-jun's gratitude. And trust me, that's worth more than the John family's approval. For a long moment Hannah just stared at her. Then slowly she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small knife. I'm going to cut your zip ties, she whispered. But you have to keep your hands behind your back so the cameras don't see. When I come back in 20 minutes I'll bring Jia. There's a loading dock at the back of the building. I can get you out through there. Hope surged through Keisha. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Hannah said, slicing through the plastic. We still have to get past the guards. After she left, Keisha sat there with her hands free but held behind her back, her mind racing through possibilities. They had a chance now. Small, dangerous but real. She just needed to keep it together for 20 more minutes. The door opened again and this time it was the young man who'd hit her. Well, he said smirking. Park Min-jun's woman. I have to admit I don't see the appeal. You're pretty enough I suppose, but to risk everything for a black woman? He must be desperate. Keisha said nothing, just glared at him. You know what's going to happen when he gets here? The man crouched in front of her. We're going to make you watch him die. Going to make sure you see every bullet that hits him, hear every scream. And then when he's dead, we're going to take Jia back to John Do-yoon. She'll grow up with us, be raised to forget her father ever existed. Rage flooded through Keisha, hot and fierce. You're never touching that child again. Big words for someone tied up and helpless. He reached out, his hand touching her face where he'd hit her. Maybe I should give you another mark. Something for Park Min-jun to see when he arrives. His hand moved to her throat, squeezing slightly. Keisha brought her hands around fast, the zip tie Hannah had cut falling away. She raked her nails across his eyes and he screamed, stumbling back. She was on her feet in an instant, grabbing the metal first aid box Hannah had left and swinging it at his head with all her strength. It connected with a satisfying crack. The man went down, blood pouring from his scalp. Keisha stood over him, breathing hard, the first aid box still in her hands. She could hear shouting, running footsteps. The door burst open and 3 guards rushed in. They saw their colleague unconscious and Keisha standing free and their weapons came up. Don't move, one ordered in Korean. Keisha raised her hands slowly. I'm not armed. She attacked Jong-soo, another guard said, checking the unconscious man. He needs a doctor. Yoon said not to hurt her, the first guard said, sounding uncertain. She just concussed Jong-soo with a first aid kit, the second guard argued. I think we're past worrying about a few bruises. Keisha's heart was pounding. She'd blown their chance at a quiet escape. Now they'd be watching her even closer. Unless. I want to see Jia, Keisha said firmly. Right now. I need to know she's okay, or I'm going to fight every one of you until you kill me. The guards looked at each other, uncertain. Yoon wants us both alive for when Min-jun arrives, Keisha continued. But if I'm injured, if I'm unconscious, the impact isn't the same. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take me to Jia. Let me see that she's okay and then I'll cooperate. Or you can drag me there by force, and I'll make sure to get hurt enough in the process that Minjun's rage will be that much worse when he sees me. It was a gamble. But she was betting they'd been given strict orders to keep both her and Jia in good condition. The first guard spoke into his radio in rapid Korean. A response came back and he nodded. Fine. We'll take you to the child. But if you try anything else. I won't, Keisha lied. They zip-tied her hands again tighter this time and marched her down a hallway. Every step, Keisha memorized the layout. Counted doors, noted exits, looked for potential weapons. They brought her to a larger room where Jia sat at a table with an older woman who was trying to get her to eat something. The moment Jia saw Keisha, she burst into tears. Keisha Uni. I'm here, baby, Keisha said as the guards shoved her into a chair across from Jia. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? No, Fa sniffled. But I'm scared. When is Daddy coming? Soon, Keisha promised. Very soon. And until then we stick together, okay? Jia nodded, reaching across the table for Keisha's hand. The guards didn't stop her. You should eat something, the older woman, Mrs. Kim presumably, said gently to Jia. Your father will want you to be strong when he arrives. I'm not hungry, Jia said, but she took a bite of rice to please the woman. Keisha caught Mrs. Kim's eye. The older woman looked troubled, unhappy about the situation. Another potential ally, maybe. How long until Park Min-jun arrives? Keisha asked one of the guards. Soon enough, he replied. Our people are watching his movements. The moment he mobilizes, we'll know. So they were tracking him. Which meant Min-jun was walking into exactly the trap they'd prepared. Unless Keisha could find a way to even the odds. She glanced around the room, taking in every detail. The windows, too high and barred. The door, guarded. The other people, Mrs. Kim and 3 armed guards. Not great odds. But Keisha hadn't survived 32 years of poverty, loss, and struggle by giving up when things looked bad. Jia, she said softly. Remember that game your daddy taught you? The one about being very, very quiet and following directions exactly. Jia's eyes widened with understanding. Min-jun had clearly drilled emergency protocols into his daughter. Yes, the little girl whispered. I think we might need to play that game soon, Keisha said. Can you be ready? I can be ready. One of the guards frowned. What game? Just a silly thing her father taught her, Keisha said dismissively. To help her be patient. The guard seemed to accept this, turning back to watch the door. Keisha met Jia's eyes and saw the intelligence there, the bravery. This child had seen her mother die, had witnessed her father nearly killed, had been kidnapped by armed men. But she wasn't broken. She was strong. Just like her father. Just like the woman who was fighting to protect her. Now they just needed to stay alive long enough for Min-jun to get there. And pray that when he did they'd all make it out alive. The rescue storm and fury. Min-jun hit the warehouse with the force of a hurricane. He'd assembled 30 men, his own security team plus allies from 3 other families who owed him favors. They came in 4 teams, each hitting a different entry point simultaneously. Min-jun led the main assault through the front entrance. The first John guard went down before he could even raise his weapon. Min-jun put 2 bullets in his chest and kept moving, his team flowing behind him like a well-oiled machine. More guards appeared and the warehouse erupted into chaos. Gunfire echoed off metal walls. Men shouted in Korean. Bodies fell. Min-jun moved through it all like death incarnate. He'd left Park Min-jun, the businessman, the calculated leader, back at the office. This was Park Min-jun, the weapon, the killer his father had trained him to be. Every man who stood between him and his family died. Second floor clear. Taeyong's voice came through the radio. No sign of the targets. Keep searching, Min-jun ordered, taking down another guard. They're here. He made his way deeper into the warehouse, following the map Jinwoo had provided. The holding area would be toward the back, away from the main entry points. A door ahead opened and 5 men emerged. Min-jun didn't hesitate. He put a bullet in the first man's head, dove behind a concrete pillar as the others returned fire, then came up shooting. 3 more men down in as many seconds. The last one threw down his weapon, hands raised. Where are they? Min-jun demanded in Korean, his gun trained on the man's head. I don't know, I swear. Minjun shot him in the knee. The man screamed, collapsing. Wrong answer. Where are they? Back rooms, the man gasped through his pain. 2 rooms, the woman and the child separated, but Minjun didn't wait for the rest. He was already running, his team following. He burst through a door to find an empty office, a first aid kit on the floor, blood on the wall. His blood ran cold. Keisha, he roared. Hyung. One of his men called from down the hall. Here. Minjun ran to find a larger room, a table with food, an older woman cowering in the corner. But no Keisha. No Jia. Where are they? He demanded, grabbing the woman. Gone, she whispered. One of our girls helped them escape. Out the back loading dock maybe 20 minutes ago. Relief and terror warred in Minjun's chest. They'd escaped. They were out there somewhere, maybe safe, maybe running into more danger. Do-yoon, he asked. Left after the woman knocked out Jong-soo. Said he didn't need to be here for the final stage. Because this was always a trap, Minjun realized. Do-yoon had never planned to be here for the assault. He'd wanted Minjun committed to the warehouse fight while he went after the real targets. Taeyong, Minjun spoke into his radio. Pull everyone out. No. This is a diversion. What? Keisha and Jia escaped. Do-yoon is hunting them. We need to find them first. Keisha's escape, running for their lives. Keisha ran through Atlanta's industrial district with Jia in her arms, her breath coming in gasps, her injured head pounding. Hannah had gotten them out through the loading dock as promised, but they'd been spotted by a patrol. The guards had raised the alarm, and now Keisha could hear vehicles, shouts, the sounds of pursuit. Keisha Uni, I'm scared, Jo whimpered against her neck. I know, baby. Me too. But we're going to be okay. Keisha ducked into an alley, pressing them both against the wall as a car roared past. We just need to get somewhere with people, somewhere public. Her phone was gone, taken by their captors. She had no way to call Minjun, no way to let him know where they were. They were on their own. Keisha emerged from the alley and spotted a gas station ahead, lights bright in the darkness. People. Witnesses. Safety maybe. She ran for it, Ja bouncing in her arms. They were 50 feet away when a black SUV cut them off. The door opened and John Do-yoon stepped out. He looked calm, almost amused. Like this was all a game to him. Ms. Morrison, he said pleasantly. Taking my insurance policy for a walk? Keisha backed up, putting herself between Do-yoon and Jia. Stay away from us. Or what? Do-yoon smiled. You'll fight me? You're injured, exhausted and carrying a child. While I have 6 armed men in that vehicle. He took a step closer. This doesn't have to be difficult. Come quietly and no one gets hurt. No one gets hurt? Keisha laughed bitterly. You kidnapped a 7-year-old child. You had your men beat me. You're trying to murder her father. Don't pretend you care about not hurting people. I care about not hurting the child, Do-yoon corrected. You're expendable. You're just bait. He gestured and 2 men emerged from the SUV moving toward her. Keisha looked around desperately. The gas station was so close. She ran. Put Jia down for just a second, told her, run to the store and don't look back, and then turned to face the men pursuing them. She had no weapons, no training, no chance. But she could buy Jia time to get to safety. The first man reached her and Keisha fought like her life depended on it. Because it did. She kicked, scratched, bit, did everything she could to slow them down. But they were professionals and she was a cleaning woman with basic first aid training. They overwhelmed her quickly, slamming her to the ground. Keisha's head hit the pavement and stars exploded in her vision. Through the haze, she saw Jia reach the gas station, saw the clerk's shocked face as the little girl burst through the door screaming for help. Safe, Keisha thought with relief. She got to safety. Then rough hands yanked her to her feet and Do-yoon's face swam into view. Brave, he said almost admiringly. Stupid but brave. He nodded to his men. Put her in the vehicle. And someone retrieve the child before the authorities arrive. No, Keisha gasped, fighting weakly. Leave her alone. Ms. Morrison, Jia Park is worth millions in leverage. Did you really think I'd let her escape? Do-yoon leaned close. This is what happens when cleaning women try to play in my world. They get broken. He turned away and Keisha saw one of his men heading for the gas station, saw the clerk on the phone, hopefully with 911, but the man would reach Jia first. And Keisha, bleeding and beaten in the back of an SUV, couldn't do anything to stop it. She'd failed. After everything, she'd failed. Then she heard it. The roar of engines. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. Dean heard it too. He turned, his expression shifting to alarm as 4 black SUVs screeched into the gas station lot, surrounding them. The doors opened and Minjun emerged from the lead vehicle. He was covered in blood, some his, most not, his face a mask of cold fury. Behind him, 30 armed men took positions, weapons trained on Duyun's people. "Get away from her," Minjun said, his voice deadly quiet. "Right now." Duyun smiled, but Keisha could see the tension in him. He was outnumbered and outgunned. "Park Minjun. You're too late. Your woman is already broken and your daughter is in that gas station calling the police," Minjun interrupted. "Which means you have about 90 seconds before this becomes very public and very messy for both of us." He took a step forward. "Or you can get in your vehicle and leave. No. And we'll settle this another day." "You're letting me go?" Dean sounded surprised. "I'm choosing my daughter over revenge," Minjun said. "For now. But Duyun? If you ever come near my family again, I will burn the John organization to the ground and salt the earth where it stood." For a long moment the two men stared at each other. Then Duyun nodded slowly. "Until next time, Park Minjun." He got in his SUV and it pulled away. His men followed, leaving Keisha alone in the parking lot with Minjun's people. Minjun ran to her, catching her as her legs gave out. "I've got you," he said, his voice breaking. "I've got you, Keisha. You're safe now." "Jia," she gasped. "He sent someone after Jia. Tiang got her. She's safe in the gas station with 3 of my best guards. The police are coming, but we have time." Minjun lifted her into his arms, carrying her to his SUV. In the back seat, wrapped in a blanket, was Jia. "Daddy," the little girl sobbed. "Kishini saved me. She told me to run and then she fought the bad men." "I know, baby." Minjun's voice was thick with emotion. "She's so brave. You both are." He settled Keisha in the back seat and Jia immediately crawled into her lap, hugging her tightly. "You said we'd be okay," Phil whispered. "And we are." Keisha held the little girl close, her own tears finally falling. They were alive. Battered and traumatized, but alive. And Minjun was here, his hand finding hers, his touch gentle despite the violence he'd just committed. "Home," she whispered. "Take us home." "Always," Minjun promised. Healing and choosing. 3 days later, Keisha woke in Minjun's bed, their bed, to sunshine streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. She sat up carefully. Her head still ached, her bruises were spectacular shades of purple and yellow, but the doctor Minjun had brought in said she'd heal completely. Physically at least. The psychological wounds were harder to measure. She found Minjun in the kitchen making breakfast. Jia was at the table doing homework, looking up with a bright smile when she saw Keisha. "You're awake. Daddy said to let you sleep, but I wanted to wake you up so badly." "I'm glad you let me sleep," Keisha said, settling into a chair and accepting the coffee Minjun pressed into her hands. "What are you working on?" "Korean language practice. Daddy's been teaching me more words." Jia pointed to her notebook. "Want to see?" For the next hour they had a normal breakfast. Talked about homework and cartoons and what to have for dinner. Pretended that 3 days ago they hadn't been kidnapped and terrorized and nearly killed. After Jia went to her room to play, Minjun turned to Keisha with serious eyes. "We need to talk." Those 4 words made Keisha's stomach drop. "About what happened? About what happens next?" He took her hand. "Keisha, I've been doing this for 15 years. Building my organization, making enemies, living in constant danger. And I always accepted it because I chose this life." "Minjun." "But you didn't choose it," he interrupted gently. "You answered a phone call from a scared little girl and you got dragged into something that nearly got you killed. And now I have to decide if I'm going to be selfish and ask you to stay anyway, or if I'm going to let you go." Keisha's heart was pounding. "You're letting me go?" "I'm giving you the choice," Minjun corrected. "If you want to walk away, I'll make sure you're protected, set up somewhere safe. I'll pay for your nursing degree, your grandmother's care, anything you need. But I won't ask you to stay in this world." He cupped her face with both hands, his eyes intense. But if you choose to stay, Keisha, you need to understand what that means. It means danger. It means always looking over your shoulder. It means being a target because you matter to me and Jia. It also means family, Keisha said softly. It means waking up with you every morning and helping Jia with her homework and building something real. Is that enough? Minjun asked. Is it worth the risk? Keisha thought about the past 3 weeks. The fear, yes, but also the joy. Jia's laughter. Minjun's rare smiles. The feeling of being valued and loved and essential to someone's happiness. She thought about her old life. Invisible, lonely, grinding through days that all looked the same. Safe but empty. 3 weeks ago I was nobody, she said. I cleaned floors and went home to an empty apartment and wondered if this was all my life would ever be. And then a little girl called me by accident and everything changed. She took Minjun's hands in hers. You're asking if it's worth the risk to stay. But Minjun, meeting you and Jia was the biggest risk I ever took. Walking into that penthouse, stitching you up, agreeing to stay. Every step was terrifying. And it's been the best choice I ever made. Keisha. I'm not done, she interrupted. Yes, it's dangerous. So I'm scared. Yes, I'm going to have nightmares about those 3 days for probably the rest of my life. But I'm also happy. Happier than I've ever been. Because I'm not invisible anymore. I matter to you and Jia, and you both matter to me. Tears were streaming down her face now. So yes, Minjun. I choose to stay. I choose this crazy, dangerous, beautiful life with you. I choose us. Minjun kissed her, deep and fierce and full of promise. When they broke apart, his eyes were wet. I love you, he said. I should have said it before, but I love you, Keisha Morrison. Completely. Irrevocably. I love you too, Keisha whispered. Both of you. From the doorway, Jia's voice. Does this mean Keisha Uni is staying forever? They turned to see the little girl watching them, hope written across her face. If she'll have us, Minjun said. Forever and ever? Jia asked. Keisha opened her arms and Jia ran into them. Forever and ever, baby. Minjun wrapped his arms around both of them, and in that moment, Keisha felt complete. This was her family. Dangerous, complicated, unconventional, but hers. And she was never letting go. 18 months later. The new house in the suburbs was perfect. Large enough for security but cozy enough to feel like a home. Minjun had bought it 6 months ago, after completing his transition into mostly legitimate business. It had been a long process. Selling off the more violent operations, partnering with law enforcement on human trafficking cases to build goodwill, restructuring his organization into something that could survive in the light. He'd made enemies doing it. Some of the old guard thought he'd gone soft. But with Taeyong's support and the backing of 2 elder families who saw the wisdom in modernization, he'd managed it. The John family had quietly dissolved after Duyun was found guilty of embezzling from his own organization. Some said Minjun had engineered the evidence. Some said Duyun had actually been guilty. Either way, that threat was neutralized. Now Minjun ran a legitimate import-export business, alongside several nightclubs and a chain of Korean restaurants. He still had muscle, still had connections, but the daily violence was mostly behind him. And Keisha had finished her nursing degree. She'd graduated top of her class, and now worked at a community health clinic 3 days a week. The other days she helped manage Minjun's charitable foundation, the one that provided healthcare to underserved communities. It was a good life. Different from what either of them had imagined, but good. Daddy. Come look. They followed Jia's voice to the backyard where the 9-year-old was showing off the garden she'd been planting with Minjun's sister Sujin. Look how big the tomatoes are getting. They're beautiful, baby, Keisha said, admiring the plants. Jia had started calling her Yalma, mother, about 6 months ago. Keisha had cried the first time, overwhelmed with love and gratitude for this child who'd accepted her so completely. Can we have spaghetti tonight? Jia asked. With the basil from the garden? Absolutely, Minjun agreed. Why don't you go pick the basil we'll need? As Jia ran off, Sujin approached, wiping dirt from her hands. She's happy, Minjun's sister said. Happier than I've seen her since Hannah died. We all are, Minjun replied, his arm around Keisha's waist. Sujin smiled. Good. You deserve it, Appa. Both of you. She headed back toward the house. I'm going to start prep for dinner. Taeyong is bringing his new girlfriend, so try not to scare her. I don't scare people anymore, Minjun protested. Both Keisha and Sujin laughed. Okay, maybe a little, he admitted. Alone in the garden with Jia happily picking herbs and singing to herself, Keisha leaned into Minjun's embrace. I have something to tell you, she said. Yeah. She turned in his arms to face him. I'm pregnant. Minjun went very still. What? About 8 weeks along. I saw the doctor yesterday to confirm. Keisha searched his face, suddenly nervous. We've never really talked about having more children and I know things are good the way they are, but... Minjun kissed her silent. When he pulled back, his eyes were shining. We're having a baby? We're having a baby, Keisha confirmed. Jia is going to lose her mind with excitement. I know. I thought we could tell her tonight at dinner if you want. Minjun pulled Keisha close, his hand settling protectively over her still flat stomach. I never thought I'd have this again. A family, a real home, someone who loves me despite everything I've done. Because of everything you've done, Keisha corrected. All of it, the good and the bad, made you who you are. And I love who you are, Minjun. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Probably not, Keisha agreed with a smile. But you've got me anyway. They stood there in the garden, wrapped around each other, while Jia sang about tomatoes and the sun set golden over their perfect, imperfect life. Keisha thought back to that night 18 months ago when a wrong number had changed everything. When she'd made the choice to answer a crying child's call, to step into danger, to trust a stranger. It had been the scariest decision of her life. And the best one. Because sometimes the wrong number connects you to exactly the right person. Sometimes danger leads to safety. Sometimes the most unlikely love story becomes the most enduring. Thank you, Minjun said softly. For what? For answering the phone that night. For saving my life. For loving Jia. For choosing us. His hand tightened on her waist. For giving me a reason to be better than I was. Keisha turned in his arms, rising on her toes to kiss him. Thank you for letting me in. For protecting us. For building this life with me. Daddy. Mama. I got all the basil. Jia came running over, her hands full of fragrant herbs. Can we make the sauce together? Absolutely, Keisha said, taking one of Jia's hands while Minjun took the other. They walked back to the house together. Father, mother, daughter, and the tiny life growing between them. A family built on accident and choice, danger and love, wrong numbers and perfect timing. And as they stepped through the back door into the warm kitchen where Sujin was already cooking and Taeyong's voice could be heard laughing about something, Keisha felt a peace settle over her. This was home. This was family. This was everything she'd ever wanted and never dared to dream she could have. And it had all started with one simple choice. To answer the phone when a scared little girl called for help. Sometimes, Keisha thought, the best things in life come from the moments when you choose compassion over caution, love over safety, and connection over self-preservation. Sometimes the wrong number is exactly the right call.